Before the Hellenistic kingdoms, there was classical Greece. And before that, there was Macedon. And all of this actually didn't start in Athens. It started in Pella, a rough and tumble city in the north of nowadays Greece. There, in the year 336 before Christ, the king of Macedon, Philip II, is chilling on his balcony, enjoying his hegemony, when a bodyguard suddenly pushes him into early retirement via stabbing. At the same time, the assassin also kills himself to make sure he doesn't spill the tea. Only Alexander, Philip's son, survives the palace drama. And to make sure he doesn't lose the throne, he gets assigned a fate worse than death. He was forced to become a regent, a ruler in training, forbidden from making mistakes. Well, that solves that, the Greeks thought to themselves. But then, a miracle happened. Somehow, Alexander takes power even though he was supposed to be too young. Now don't get your hopes up, since it wasn't a democracy just yet, folks. But it was Macedon's original expansionist, Alexander the Great. After a presumably very chaotic coronation and a very awkward "I own you now" tour of Greece, it was time for the next family drama. How did you become king while being a rookie? I was literally chosen by the gods. The gods. Yes, that is the worst excuse I've ever heard. It's not an excuse. It's literally the myth. What? But whether the Greeks believed it or not, they now had a much bigger and louder problem. With the new king around, their claim for independence started to become wobbly, as there was a legitimate hegemon. Now, better call Saul. Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The League of Corinth says you do. Discover more legal defense and diplomatic immunity. And now the part I think everyone knows. Eventually, the army of the young king crashes into the Persian Empire, and the soldiers roll into the cold, wet sand that is rough and gets everywhere. Well, this is it, said Alexander, in a very manly and sexy voice. Yes, men. It was an honor sharing the same ambitions with you. And just when they think they are about to lose, a horse named Bucephalus jumps from the stable and the cavalry charges the... Okay, this is straight up becoming a Bible story now. Gods choosing kings, kings ordering to kill cities, and a horse that no one else could ride. What's next? The parting of the Red Sea? Well, chronologically speaking, no. But I get the hint. This all is history. It might or might not have happened exactly like that. But it is crucial to the birth of the Hellenistic world, which we are about to talk about actually. So, why don't you shut your mouth, sit down, and enjoy the free entertainment? Who are you even? Get out of here. Anyway, after being educated by Aristotle for an unknown time, the boy grows older and stronger, like absurdly strong. Living on protein-rich philosophy apparently turns you into a tactical genius. So one day, while he's out flexing in Thebes and doing whatever hegemonic teenagers do, the city revolts. The king finds them, adopts the survivors, and teaches them presumably how to surrender, since they were literal rebels till then. And the king grows up into a short, muscular conqueror. One day, Alexander gets into a fight with some thugs who work for guess who? King Darius. And during the brawl, the king learns the truth. He is not just a random Balkan boy. He is the lost king of Asia, the rightful heir that the Persians tried to independent delete. So naturally, the man decides to go on a bizarre adventure. He marches straight back to Macedon, gathers the locals, shouts something dramatic like, "Please become a member of the YouTube channel Historically." And together with the people of the League, he overthrows the Persian order and reinstates himself, who apparently survived the assassination. Alexander gets crowned as Pharaoh in Egypt, and everyone's cheering, celebrating, throwing flowers, etc. Everyone except the Persians, because they started to like this whole empire thing. So, They decided to build a blockade together, a couple kilometers over. Eventually, they find a great spot near the Tigris River. Beautiful scenery, fertile plains, perfect vantage points, a village of Babylonians. All was going well. But then, because this is Macedonian legend, disaster strikes. He can't agree where to put the border. We should put the border at the Euphrates. No, all the way to India. No, my location is better. No, mine's better. No, 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 no. And suddenly, the founding of the Hellenistic world became a geopolitical argument that could have been solved with, like, I don't know, a treaty. But no, this is ancient Persia. So instead, he goes, let's just ask the swords. They hold a contest. Whoever conquers more land wins divine approval, because why not? Darius goes, I have 1,000,000 men. Alexander then responded, cool. I have a phalanx. You cheated. The gods love me more, bro. They literally don't. Alexander decides to just start building a tiny empire. If Darius won't submit to him, he will just make this empire himself. And Darius, being a certified Persian monarch, menace, decides to clown on him. Darius hires mercenaries like it's nothing, and goes, oh no, look, I'm flanking your supply lines, boy. What will you do? Arrest me? Your army sucks? What? You going to exile me on an island? He didn't. He chased him to the ends of the earth. And this is the start of the empire. Historically extra long facts, part 18. So Alexander is now king of kings, right? But his empire at this point is basically a military camp. To attract people, Alexander calls it a melting pot, and not the culinary kind. The everyone who's willing to learn Greek come on in kind, which means suddenly the empire fills up with Persian nobles, Egyptian priests, Indian mystics, guys who stole spices, guys who are spices, bureaucrats, and a couple lost tourists. Alexander looks at his crowd and goes, perfect. But there is a problem. A huge problem, because the empire has food, gold, horses, one king, but exactly 0 rest. This is an issue. Oh, you think? Shut up. So, Alexander hosts a big wedding and invites his companions, the Macedonians, and tell them, come celebrate. Bring the whole army. There will be mass marriages. Let's be honest, no one can ignore such a great forced cultural fusion party. So, the Macedonians show up and everyone's vibing. But then, mid-party, Alexander gives the signal, and the Macedonians just marry all the Persian women. Alexander literally solved his cultural imbalance with a 4th century BC shotgun wedding event. Zeus would be proud. The next morning, the veterans wake up with a hangover and are furious. They want to go home. They mutiny, obviously, and we get the first official army strike just years after the conquest of the world. Bravo. The Macedonian men walk out between the lines and yell, stop! We don't want our new wives killing our old traditions. Stop being stupid. Pay us and let us go home. And they do. Just like that, the army and the king became estranged, which must have been awkward at the campfire. From here, Alexander cycles through more battles. We still have over 10 years of conquests to cover, so I'll just speedrun us through this timer, please. The first conquest is Persia. He creates the phalanx, did all the crazy stuff we just went over, then disappears one day in India. Historians say he ascended to legend, though he probably just got malaria. Alexander was followed by the Indian campaign, a jungle king who creates war elephants, fights Porus, actually does not win easily for a while, and turns back eventually. The third phase was basically the opposite of his earlier years, and decided conquest is cringe, and exploring is so much cooler. So he marches through the Gedrosian desert, followed by losing half his men. He dies because he angered the wine, supposedly. So the fourth phase, a half-drunk, half-dying person, takes power, brings back the drinking, yet plans new wars. He also starts paving the way for his followers by building cities, libraries, and statues. The next king kept the spirit going and constructed the massive tomb we still applaud Alexander for to this day and becomes insanely legendary. So he gets assassinated by his political opponents, and so did his successors, who were abusing his power left and right. Though he did build a library, but it didn't stop the Romans. Finally, the generals, who were so incredibly greedy and ambitious, were expelled from the unity of the empire by the reality of the situation. And just to prevent any more idiotic wars from taking over, the Macedonian people turned the place from an empire to a collection of rival kingdoms. And with that, we enter the era of the Diadochi. Yes, still not Rome, which in theory means no more Alexanders ever. We are done. We have learned our lesson. So instead of one king, they elect 4 generals who have the power of a king, but definitely aren't kings. They rule at the same time and can kill each other to quote-unquote keep each other in balance. They also switch out each year by dying. I'm sure that will go well. Let's see how well. Oh my God, it's all burning down. Ever wondered how Macedon became so militaristic? It wasn't just because their first king's daddy was a conqueror. It's actually because of what's happening right here in front of us. Macedon wasn't the only state that liked to fight, because the city-states in the south wanted to do it before them. And the Macedonians lost to them. And not just a bit. The Athenians beat Philip, humiliate him, sit around like it's a debate club, and leave only after the Macedonians paid a ransom in timber. This event might as well be Macedon's original story of their villain arc. Never again can we be this humiliated, said the Macedonians to each other. So they turn ultra-militaristic. Anything that isn't nailed to the ground is about to get phalanxed. And oh God, were they good at it. They started with their Greek neighbors, then some Thracian tribes, then Persian colonies, then more tribes, then even more tribes. Basically, if you live near early Macedon, you were about to receive a very polite invitation to join the League or be flattened by it. But the real challenge comes from across the water in the east. Persia. They have a massive navy, way too much gold, a beautiful palace, and immortals. You know, the kind of neighbor Macedon absolutely can't tolerate. So, the two empires start fighting in what historians very casually call the Wars of Alexander, which is basically a trilogy movie about chaos. In the first movie, Alexander goes, "You know what? I want that coastline." Darius responds by saying that you don't even have a navy to stop us, and Alexander responds by building a navy by conquering the ports, and win anyway. 10 for Macedon. Then the second war starts, and this is the big one. Darius appears. This man shows up with 200,000 troops, scythed chariots, and the determination of many years of deep-rooted imperialism. He gathers at Gaugamela, marches his army over the plains, which is insane even today, and absolutely wrecks the Persian lines for years. Alexander eventually wins because he is Alexander. But yeah, Darius made him sweat. That's too old for Macedon. Then the third war is basically Alexander saying, the world still exists, and that bothers us. So they try to delete the whole world from the timeline. Boom, gone. Survival of the fittest, or whatever. And just for good measure, so they won't fight again, they burn the palace of Persepolis. And so, with their only real rival out of the way, Macedon gets addicted to expansion, like the Romans got to concrete. They conquer Egypt, Syria, Bactria, India, and of course the known world. Instead of going to therapy about what happened to them before, Alexander literally conquered 90% of the known world, Hellenized another 5%, and destroyed entire armies just to make sure they were strong enough to have revenge against the Persians for what they did 150 years before. And the man who gets to deal the final blow to these Persians is Alexander the Great. Alexander is basically the final boss of the classical era. He marches into Persia with a relatively small army and proceeds to absolutely dismantle the place. And by dismantle, I mean defeat satrap after satrap, conquer all of Mesopotamia, dip into Egypt, flirt with the Siwa oasis, and then casually invade India just to see what they taste like. He comes back to Babylon so powerful that the generals becomes afraid of him. So they order him to come to his senses and to stop conquering. He naturally refuses and starts marching to the edge of the world anyway. The army panics and mutinies as Alexander enters the Indian frontier with little to no desire to stop. But that doesn't mean the world was his just yet. He still had to defeat the elephants and his own men before he can legally become, I don't know, the first world ruler history has seen. He fights all across the continent. Boops Roxana on the way because why not? And after 10 years finally gains control of the empire. Half the army likes him. The other half wants to go home by stabbing him. But is that hate justified? Well, kind of, but also absolutely not. Alexander wasn't a straight-up evil guy most people portray him as in Persian propaganda. He was actually doing a lot of stuff that regular Macedonians loved. He fixed the chaotic currency. So, trade actually made sense, and it's why we now have drachmas. Alexandria is literally named after him. So you're welcome. He lowered taxes for veterans, canceled debts, expanded citizenship to Persians, rebuilt half the temples, gave lands to veterans, regulated grain supply so the army didn't starve, and tried to keep the generals under control so rogue satraps wouldn't create another civil war. But, and this is the but, the Macedonians couldn't ignore. Alexander was also absorbing every culture he possibly could. Persian dress, yep. Egyptian crown, sure. Hindu philosophy, why not? Basically, the man was collecting cultures like they were infinity stones. And the Macedonians, who spent 200 years being paranoid about barbarians, looked at this and went, "Oh God, he's becoming a barbarian." So they decide to save the Macedonian way by doing the most tradition-destroying thing possible. They refuse to follow him. And this might have been the dumbest thing they could have possibly done, because tiny problem, everyone liked Alexander, except the tired soldiers. The liberators walk out of the camp like, "We did it, guys. We saved the home." While the Macedonians are more like, "You stopped the guy who gave us free gold and conquered the world. Let's just hope this somehow doesn't escalate. Look how they massacred my boy." This is Hephaestion,